Maybe, Melanie, we can do a roll call of the board again.
Sure. Chair Wonderman,
Here.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Here.
Director Alba,
Here.
Director Del Bono,
Here.
and Director Intensity.
Here.
We have a forum.
Great. So, for those of you who were here earlier, you know that we already recited the Pledge of Allegiance before the business plan workshop, but let me make some comments about for those of you who weren't. This is the WETA Board of Directors meeting, it's our monthly meeting. It's being conducted in person and by video conference that's being recorded. To reduce background noise, all video conference participants will be joining the meeting in listen-only mode and muted during the discussion. WETA welcomes comments from the public. A public comment period will be set aside after each discussion period and will be accepted in person and by video conference. Video conference participants wishing to speak are requested to email your name and item number you'd like to comment on to boardofdirectors@watertransit.org. And if you're unable to send an email, you will be given an opportunity to speak on the item after those who have signed up. So I believe we're up to item number 7 that takes care of item number 6 on the published agenda. So item number 7 is a report of the board chair. And I think I'll personally pass, except to say, I thought that, for those of you who attended this morning's discussion on the business plan for 2050. Again, thank you, Directors Moyer and Alba, for your leadership, Executive Director Murphy, and your incredible team, Mike and Kevin, and the rest of the team who made, and our consultants did a really good job of shaping the future for our agency and coming up with questions and some answers and setting out a course for us to work on. So this was, I thought it was a really great use of time, and I fully enjoyed having the opportunity to have that discussion. So that's my comment. I'll turn it over to Director Intensity for comment.
Well, I just want to add that I thank also the staff and to my colleagues on the board for taking part in the development of the business plan. It was a very interesting and very challenging report. There's a lot ahead of us, and that's about it.
Very good. Director Moyer.
Thank you. I don't have anything new to add. Thank you to the staff for what appears to be a very busy summer as always. And special thanks to Kevin and Mike and Gabriel for the presentation today for the workshop.
Thank you. Director Alba.
I'm just echoing what everyone else has been saying. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be on the subcommittee for the business plan development. The staff team and the consultant team are open to feedback and are making this an incredibly exciting and transparent journey towards our future vision. And it's just a fantastic project to be working on. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Alba. Director Del Bono.
Ditto. Thanks to everybody that worked on it. That's all I have.
Very good. Thank you. I think directors are all kind of talked out from this morning. Great for the public and for the staff to move along. Who knows if it'll stay that way. So let me turn it over. Item number 9 is the staff report. So let me turn it over to you, Director Murphy.
Thank you, Chair Wonderman. I'm going to start with, it was a busy summer, as Director Moyer mentioned. I'm going to start with how we kicked off that summer. We had a very productive trip to Scandinavia to look firsthand at really the global epicenter of zero emission vessels. And we know this is something that is going to be a real focus for WETA moving forward. And so I want to share a little bit of what we saw over there, talk about some lessons learned, talk about where we go from here. There's a lot of work to do, but we did learn an awful lot during our trip there. I want to just start by also thanking Chair Wonderman and Director Alba for accompanying staff on this trip. always good to have policymakers there meeting with these companies and institutions and agencies so that they understand how our decisions are made. And especially thanks to Director Alba for really connecting us with a lot of the folks we met with in Sweden, especially made the trip much more productive to have a personal invitation and introduction to some of those folks. Also, just wanted to acknowledge Innovation Norway. The Norwegian leg was just an amazing opportunity to meet with so many people. Our schedule was jam-packed. I feel like I need to go back to Norway actually as a tourist at some point to see everything that we missed. But Kelly Rachinsky and Innovation Norway were our hosts on that leg, and they had us along with a number of other agencies meeting with Norwegian companies and delegation members, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the details. So Norway and Sweden are no doubt the hub of zero emissions maritime technology. This is the place where zero emission vessels have really accelerated in terms of being designed, being built, and being operated. You can see this chart. It's the number of electric vessels that are in operation in Norway. They started with one single vessel, the MV Ampere, in 2015. They had 3 in 2018, 3 in 2016, 9 in 2018, 52 in 2021, and there are 84 electric ferries in operation today in Norway. These are some of the folks that we met with on the left-hand side. These are members of our group that traveled with us. You can see the Golden Gate Bridge District and had representatives there learning about electric ferries. They are also going to share this journey with us. BC Ferries, Launch Alaska, the Alaska Department of Transportation, the Energy Commission. We were fortunate to have Patty Monahan, an Energy Commissioner, there with us, and CARB representatives. So just a good cross-section of stakeholders in this process. And then a number of companies and academic institutions and organizations that we met with over the course of this trip to learn about what they're working on, to learn how it might apply to our system, and to understand the latest and greatest in terms of this technology. We had some distinct goals. These are not all of them, but these are some critical goals out of this trip. Number one, let's identify the battery electric advancements that are out there. We know this is going to be our first dipping of our toe in the water in terms of zero emission service. We have grants to build electric vessels, to build electric infrastructure, to operate them. We know we have requirements that our service will need to be transitioned in a large part to electrified service over the next several years. And so we need to know what the landscape looks like. Evaluate fuel technologies, goal number 2, the hydrogen, and as we learned, other opportunities for liquid fuels that are zero emission is probably evolving a little slower than the electric battery electric front, but understanding what that landscape looks like is important. And just like battery electric advancements, the Scandinavia area is where this work is largely taking place. Goal number 3, if any of this is going to be usable by us, it needs to have a domestic manufacturing presence to comply with Buy America, to comply with the Jones Act. And so we wanted to not just explore, but really encourage some of these companies to be thinking about that if they're not already. And number 4, this technology is evolving really quickly. We learned how fast it is evolving. And so we need to think about how we can stay on top of that from a procurement standpoint, from a strategic standpoint. How do we make sure that our system evolves along with that technology? Battery electric advancements. Even though there are 84 vessels that are operating that are battery electric in Norway, there are only a few that really would meet the needs of our system. Every vessel that we saw, we always asked a few key questions, and I think where we always got stuck is top speed. We have a fast ferry system. We want to make sure that our conversion to electrified service doesn't compromise our passengers in any way. I think that's an important goal to have. We don't want to say it's cleaner air quality, less emissions, but it's going to take you a whole lot longer to make your trip. That would not be the best message for attracting ridership. And so we are looking to make sure that a few a few qualities are met. This is the Legacy of the Fjords vessel in Oslo. It's a carbon fiber vessel. It is a 400 passenger vessel. It takes 20 minutes to charge from a 2.4 megawatt per hour battery pack. And it has a 20 knot top speed. So we're looking at getting close to the area of matching the WETA vessel speed. Tim, you can see there in the right-hand photo, was really invested in learning as much as he could about this vessel. And he says he can take enough weight off of it to make it go fast enough for our needs. So this one I would count as being potentially usable by our system, or a vessel that's the equivalent. There's another one that Tim had an opportunity to ride in Stavanger, Norway. Also a carbon fiber vessel, 300 passengers, 42 meters, 20 knot top speed, 40 nautical mile range at 18 knots, 12.5 million for the vessel that he rode in Stavanger. The Legacy of the Fjords vessel that you see there was very luxurious and cost a little bit more at 14.5 million. But we're identifying vessels that are in existence today that would meet our requirements, and that's important. There are a couple of more that are going to be emerging over the next couple of years. One of them was just traveled to Stavanger, Norway, and it has a lot of potential. It's the MS Medstrom. It's 150 passenger vessels, so we're talking about the relative size of the vessels that we have grants to fund for our San Francisco waterfront service. 27 knot top speed. $11 million, and again, it just launched in July. Then there's a one that's a little bit further off in development by a Swedish company called Green City Ferries that we had an opportunity to meet with. Also 150 passengers, 28 bikes, 30 knot top speed, and it's full. It's a foil assist hull, and they're going to be piloting service on this vessel next summer in Stockholm. So you can see how fast every year we get to vessels that are a little bit more advanced, more sophisticated, and start to meet our needs. It's encouraging for where we are in the process. Fuel technologies, we learned a lot, and there's a lot more to learn. You can see that chart on the left is, I thought was fascinating. There are 5 different types of hydrogen out there. There's a brown hydrogen, a gray hydrogen, a blue hydrogen, a pink hydrogen, and a green hydrogen. And I can't tell you the difference between all of those in any detail yet. It gets very sophisticated, very confusing. And when you add to it new fuels like ammonia and methanol, there's just a lot of activity happening on the fuel front. And one of our goals was to identify whether hydrogen or some other type of fuel is right for us to be exploring and adopting in the near term. And I think we all left in agreement that it's too early for us to really be thinking about these fuels in terms of being components of our service in the near term. But we know that we need to be testing, taking advantage of opportunities to demonstrate these fuels, to test these fuels consistent with the sea change decision that we made over the summer. We need to look for other opportunities to do that so that we're continuing to be at the forefront of that technology. Explore potential for U.S. production. We learned a lot about how companies are thinking about the U.S. market, and some are ahead of others. But there are battery companies that are specialized in maritime applications that are propping up U.S. manufacturing right now. So there is potential for us to have compliant equipment that we can procure as a part of our effort to transition to zero emission technology in the near term. Same thing on the shipbuilding side. The operators that are building ships that are operating in Norway and Sweden are partnering with shipyards in the U.S. And so there will be an opportunity for us to have some domestic manufacturing opportunities. We need to continue to encourage that to happen, that to expand. We need to have as broad and diverse a marketplace as we can, obviously, for the procurements that are coming up. Capturing the benefits of rapidly evolving technologies. It's really exciting. You can see on the left here, autonomous charging, where crews don't need to plug the vessel in. It automatically connects to the vessel that we saw 3 different examples of how that works, and some of them on high frequency, high volume transit systems in Oslo. System monitoring, you can see the screens in the middle photo there. There's a lot of focus on monitoring the unique systems that are involved in zero emission service to make sure that that safety and performance and efficiency are all tracked. And then the vessel on the right is the first of its kind, 100% autonomous vessel. No pilots needed, no, it operates on its own like an autonomous car would in an environment obviously on the water that's a lot more difficult to navigate than the streets. So that is a technology that is probably going to evolve as rapidly as the zero emission technology has, and we need to make sure that we're staying on top of that. So next steps, the findings that we have, especially for our near-term procurements, need to be incorporated into our electrification study and our 2050 business plan. We need to make some assumptions about how these technologies will be integrated in our system. We need to monitor these advancements continuously, be prepared to pivot as technologies evolve. We need to seek opportunities to develop partnerships and deploy new technologies on our system when they present themselves. And leverage relationships to make sure that our procurement strategy is in line with the marketplace, and that a market for these, that these products will exist in a way that's that is purchasable by us. With that, I don't have anything else to add, but happy to respond to questions or comments.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And thanks for dragging me along. It was really tough, but had to be done. And thank you, Director Alba, for helping out by organizing the Sweden, Stockholm, which is an amazing place. And it's just absolutely reinforcing and eye-opening to see these vessels at scale and in operation. I wasn't really expecting that. I was a little out of date on the number and actually the scale to see a 300-400 passenger vessel pull in, and it's fully electric. It was amazing to me, and that there wasn't just 1 or 2 of them, but they're out there en masse. And they were able to describe the victories that they've had, as well as the challenges. And the shore power side seems to me, from one of the things I learned is the challenges as much getting the energy into the boat from the shore as it is having a vessel that operates on the electric energy. So that's something that we really need to concentrate on as we think about our strategy. Make sure that we get these things and there's a way to power them up. One of the pictures that Seamus showed is they had this really cool. We went to this little terminal in near Hagestad, I think it was, in Norway, and it had this automated arm. This really cool thing that came up and connects to the vessel. Nobody needs to touch it, and it works and it charges up. And we're all there taking pictures, and it charged for a few minutes, and then it disconnects. Is it fully charged? Well, no. Well, why not? Well, because there's not enough power to do that. So it has to go on to the next terminal and charge again. And so that's the problem that they had there that I think we're going to see as well. But phenomenal opportunities, and met some really interesting people, and it was great to spend time with you and with Tim, and you learn a lot about this and get perspective on it. I wanted to bring up one issue that I think is important, and it gets back to the plan earlier today, when we're talking about economic development. But we're about to embark on a major expenditure over the next generation in these vessels, and we're sitting here in Alameda, and as I look out the window, I see a lot of ship repair, ship maintenance functioning sites, and I've spent a lot of time lately at Mare Island working on the vessel that we're reconstructing, spending almost $20 million to reconstruct the Klamath where, a shipbuilding, ship engineering company has spent a lot of time, expertly, putting the ship back in order, less the engine doesn't have that, it's too old. I'm also thinking that, this is, this, when you talk about innovation, a lot of innovation comes from being involved in manufacture. That's where, that's why we're meeting with these folks, is because they've learned the ins and outs of actually doing this. And I think that we have, tremendous leadership in green energy innovation here in the Bay Area. And I know, for example, I understand that Lawrence Berkeley Lab is going to be heavily seeking out federal funding that's available from the Department of Energy on hydrogen and hydrogen development, which they see at LBL, they see as being mostly applicable to trucking, ports, and potentially this kind of a use. So there's a potential partnership for us, with the likes of an LBL or a Lawrence Livermore Lab, which I think is where the sea change was conceived. But this is a big potential industry for us in the Bay Area, and a leadership potential. And we don't build ships here. We used to build ships here like crazy, and then we went out of the business, and we retreated from maritime quite a bit. And maybe this is the time to unretreat. And I realize we don't have quite the workforce that would need to be here and trained to do this work. But we've got some really good workers, and we've got some really ingenious innovators and investors that are here. And if we were just going to build one or two of these things, I'd say fine, let's just build them where we can in the United States, because they have to be built in the United States, and go on. But we're looking at a lot of construction over the next years that's going to involve a lot of innovation and a lot of money and a lot of investment. And I think part of our strategy ought to be doing it here. I realize again, it's not easy to do it. It's not necessarily our business to do that, but again, I think it goes to I talked about being opportunistic. So if we're going to go down this path, let's make the most of it. And I'm sure that our partners in organized labor, these would all be, really well compensated union jobs that we desperately need in the region. And so I just see nothing but opportunity. And maybe it's just adds another challenge, but with a great payoff.
Mare Island awaits you.
Mare Island awaits. I see Director Delvano has his hand eloquently raised.
Thank you. So it's funny you should bring that up, and then Tony's comment, I agree with, because I've had a couple conversations over the last several months, about industry, mostly around bay ship and yacht, and that's one of the boat yards we have. But it's always bugged me that we take in these bids and they're mostly out of state. And like you said, we're entering this opportunity, and we have the technology and the people that have the brains behind the technology here in the Bay Area, and we're missing that piece. And one of the conversations, besides Mare Island, you look at Pittsburgh and other areas like that are outside of ECDC and that had manufacturing that are gone. And I do think it's well worth the conversation. I mean, we're not going to be the ones to snap the finger and say, let's do it. But I think some of the conversations I've had with the machinists and some of these other labor unions and, people in the Bay Area, it's worth having a conversation when we're spending that kind of money that we're talking about on these boats. Also, I mean, let's not forget, a lot of our money is coming from the Bay Area. That's what supports our business. And it'd be nice if we could have the conversation and start looking at, is there an interest? Is there the ability to manufacture these types of ferries here in the Bay Area? And if not, at least at minimum, is there a way to put them together in the Bay Area? How do we get started? I definitely would be interested in exploring that as we move forward here. because as you point out, it's a huge commitment of funds, and those funds are directly coming out of the pockets of people in California. And I think those jobs belong here. So I definitely would be on board for looking more into that. And I can tell by you and Tony's comments that I think you guys are supportive of it. And I think the whole board would be supportive of at least a conversation.
I think there's a lot of institutions in the Bay Area that would love the opportunity to work on this. Director Alba?
No, I think it's a fantastic idea. I love the big ideas that are coming out today. Having been on the trip and having had Tim Hanners with us on the trip was fantastic. I think you added so much value to me in learning what we need to look for and what WETA ferries, how we differ from other systems, and especially Norway, where so much of the ferries are roll on, roll off with vehicles and less focused on transporting passengers for various reasons. So I think that was invaluable to have you there, and seeing your excitement about every boat and vessel we were on was fantastic. I want to add that battery electric technology is advancing so rapidly that it seems like most of our routes, not the longest distance, but many of our routes can be served by battery electric within the next several years. So that shifted our focus away from hydrogen and other fuels a bit. At the same time, that technology is advancing extremely rapidly too. And if there are opportunities for the green hydrogen, which is the renewable energy, solar, water, wind energy, there are opportunities, and it's great to hear that Lawrence Berkeley is looking heavily into that, just to have that for the longer distance routes. But maybe in 10 years with battery technology evolution, even our heaviest, longest routes might be served by battery as well. Seamus, I appreciate that you brought up the autonomy, or having autonomous services and autonomous transit. It was abundantly clear in Norway that it has nothing to do with replacing crew. It has everything to reduce monotonous job duties, job functions, and functions that are extremely complex that can be done autonomously instead. So that when an operator, an engineer comes home in the afternoon or in the evening, that they can focus on their family rather than being exhausted from extremely hard days of work. So it's very much about thinking about the social good that autonomy brings rather than replacing crew. And I think that's a discussion that we can have at the regional level as well, that moving towards autonomous services isn't about reducing crews or skills. It's about workforce development and making sure that our workforce feels appreciated and that they're doing the right things that they're trained for. And then back to the whole thing about battery capacity, or sorry, electricity capacity, power coming from the grid, that battery storage is incredibly important as well. That in many locations, you cannot fill up a boat's batteries because of constraints on when the electricity is available at that specific locations. But through battery storage, you can fill up batteries that then can be used when they're critically needed. So I think this trip was incredibly helpful for me in understanding some of the challenges and opportunities that we have as we're moving towards this green transition.
Thanks very much. Other comments from directors? Go ahead, I'll turn it back to you.
I would just say, super, really pleased that you all took the initiative to do this. And the partners that you took with you is also a great best practice. So I'm really excited to see that. This is terrific. Thanks for sharing the feedback and the learnings and stunning that there are 80-something electric vessels running. I didn't know that either. So looking forward to more. The bar set not so high anymore.
Absolutely. All right, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Tom Hall to talk about some passenger experience upgrade steps that we've taken, including our latest addition to our fleet and how that's being received around the region.
Absolutely. Thanks, Seamus. Chair Wonderman, directors, we promised in previous meetings that we come back to and update you on the passenger experience upgrades that we had talked about. And so the first big one that we're happy to talk about is the launch of our integrated ticketing system. You may remember back in March of 2022, you authorized contract with Anchor Operating Systems to develop an integrated ticketing system that would handle everything that Clipper doesn't. That's our onboard paper tickets, our mobile tickets, and our special events tickets for Oracle Park and Chase Center. We were able to get that done in a few months, thanks to really Herculean effort by a lot of people at WETA, a lot of people at Blue and Gold Fleet, and of course our contract vendor as well. So that launched on July 19th. We launched all of the integrated ticketing services on that day. We didn't have any outages in terms of, we were thinking, do we have to go fare free for a day so that we can replace all the equipment? But everyone worked really hard to make it seamless so we didn't have to do that. I think Aaron breathed a sigh of relief that we didn't have to go free fare or fare free on a day in there. But so the app is available in the Apple iStore and on Android devices. I know we're all Clipper users around here, but a lot of folks have tested it out to see how it works, bought tickets on it, tested it out. We're also selling tickets on our website now for the first time ever. And so that's been a pretty good addition for folks who want to buy tickets for other people, buy tickets for their children or friends as a gift. We're looking at finding ways to expand the opportunities with potentially gift cards down the line so people can gift ferry service to their loved ones around the holidays, which we think is actually a really good gift. And so we're just continuing to plug along, of course, with any new integrated ticketing system like this, just the sheer scale of it. There's going to be bugs and hiccups, but we've managed to get through a lot of them. And we're excited at hopefully the next meeting to be able to announce the next passenger upgrade that will come that's really tied in with the app as well. I did want to make sure it took a moment to thank, of course, Mike Garrity led the procurement and the planning team has been involved along the way. My team with Raphael Regan have been involved in getting the app up to snuff and looking the way we want, and all of that integrated. Of course, Aaron McGrath and Sherry Safon from the accounting team have been working hard to make sure that all the money goes to the right places and is accounted for. And then really the Blue and Gold team has just been phenomenal. So I see Pat's on the meeting. Hopefully he can pass on our thanks to, in particular, Jennifer Austin, and all of the crew members and deckhands who had to learn a new way to sell tickets and be able to do that. So that's been a great help. And then I want to mention the operations team here at WETA as well. Kevin Donnelly was essentially the project manager for this and was able to get it all organized and ready to go, really focusing on the equipment hardware that we had to put on the boats. And it's really hard to flip a switch. One day you're selling tickets on the boats using one set of equipment. Then the next morning, 30 a.m., you have to be ready to sell on a brand new system. So getting that flipped over pretty seamlessly was great. So just thanks to Blue and Gold Fleet, the WETA team, and of course Anchor for being by our side, and they'll continue to be by our side as we continue to grow ticket sales on the new system. Be happy to answer any questions about that. I did want to go ahead and show one slide quick on a only slightly related topic. Vice Chair Moyer had asked how Dorado has been received. At our last meeting, we reported to you that Dorado was about to enter service. We had done the christening event at that point when we met in early June. but it was not yet in service because we were wrapping up some training and some final kind of adjustments to the vessel, making sure the crews and captains were all comfortable operating the vessel. And so I believe in mid-June, around June 10th is when we put it into service. And we got a lot of great feedback from passengers. I'll just share one slide that shows a bit of a, get this to advance. So a lot of tweets of excitement, of course, when the boat came out. We did have a practice there for the first month or two of announcing on Mondays on Twitter, where the boat's going to be this week, because people were asking us. So that was really to save ourselves a little bit of time to proactively figure it out. You can see that when it showed up on some folks' routes, they recognized that it was a new boat. Looks a little different inside if you've been on the boat. It's got a different flooring, a non-slip flooring that's different than what we have on the other boats. Of course, the selfie deck, as I call it, on the upper level on the back of the boat, just has an amazing amount of great space and some sheltered seating. Part of the issue is that the boat is really fast. So if it gets out on open water at 36 knots, it can be a little gusty, but there's actually a good sheltering on those benches on the aft deck, upper deck. You can see someone showing off their rookie card. As you may have seen, we've been doing these fleet cards for a few months now. We actually designed them during the pandemic and then just waited for people to come back before we actually printed them and put them on the boats. So we did have the Dorado rookie card out there. For Director and Tinsley, we do have the Legends card for one of our retired vessels in Vallejo. We do have a Legends card for MV Vallejo. So we wanted to make those rare, kind of like the rookie Joe DiMaggio or something. So we only printed a few of those and sprinkled them on the boat. So that's a keeper that you'll have to find by riding lots of ferries. And then you'll see an image there. The Secretary of the California State Transportation Authority, Cox Omishakin, came out here to Central Bay, and we let him drive a boat. Captain Tony Heater is there behind him helping out. But that was a great experience to have him on Dorado, checking it out and driving as Seamus and Aaron were able to talk about the future of ferry service. There was only really one critical feedback for Dorado, is that some of the bike storage options on the aft deck, in certain cases, certain bikes, heavier bikes were falling over on trips. So what we've done, as soon as we alerted Tim and the fleet team in the shipyard to the issue, they immediately mobilized to find a solution. So they've prototyped a solution. It'll be installed on Dorado next week, and we'll test it out. And if it works really well, the plan is to produce these and put them on all of our vessels to provide some additional bike stowage options that are better for the changing profile of bicycles. As we've seen, I know Bart's dealt with this as well, bicycles are changing. They're getting bigger, heavier, because they're becoming e-bikes, they're becoming cargo bikes. And so we want to make sure that we're not holding any passengers back from using the ferry because their bike doesn't fit exactly like they think it should. So we're looking at that, and we're hopeful that that will be a great solution that we can install on Dorado and then potentially all of the rest of the vessels as well. Happy to answer any questions about the app, the ticketing system, or Dorado.
Well, I'll just say I see it from my office crossing, going back and forth on the bay, and it looks fantastic. I see a lot of excitement for it. So thank you to the entire team. Really excited about it.
Great. Thank you.
Just a, great accomplishment of the team to be able to seamlessly move from the former system to the new on the ticketing. With the time that we took the action and said, we're going to do this, you always sort of cross your fingers, said, what are we getting into? How's that going to work over? And we've seen some other changes at transit agencies where, there was some overwhelm, and that you were able to pull it off so well. It's a great tribute to the work that you guys did. So congratulations.
No, I'd like to add to that, because you kind enough to give me a heads up on the change, expecting there to be a certain number of calls from people like me who don't want to do anything except buy a paper ticket. And I did not have a single call. And people took it in stride.
Yeah, Thomas, I'd like to add too, on a great job you're doing, because I see your work all over the place, and it helps. So it's awesome to see how well the communication is with everybody and the involvement that you get the passengers and the customers involved too. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just very quickly, having explored the app, it's great. It's very legible, easy to find the information that you want to. You can see the ferries that are on the water, which I love. I also really appreciate that under schedules, as you scroll to the schedules tab or get into the schedules, that there's a box at the bottom that says for ferries to Marin, see Golden Gate ferries, and for ferries to Treasure Island, see Treasure Island ferries. In the future, if there could be even a link, I understand that that's not going to work in this box, but a link to those two agencies, that would be fantastic, or to those web pages. But as a rider, it's so hard to know where I need to go depending on which transit agency or provider that I'm supposed to use. So having these, this is a minor step, but it's one of the critical steps that we need. And one day, maybe Google Maps and all of the other apps that are out there with transit information will make it easier for me as a user to not have to worry about what public transit agency I'm getting on, but rather where to go to in order to get to my destination, wherever that may be. So I really appreciate that little touch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Next item is regional measure 3. There's been some action on this big topic this morning, obviously, but after a lot of crickets for years, we finally had a little bit of activity. Catherine, you want to give us an update on the court's decision?
Sure. So this is just a short update. Briefing on the case challenging the RM3 tolls was deferred until the California Supreme Court issued a decision in a separate case called Zolly v. City of Oakland. And Zolly involved a challenge to franchise fees that were paid to a waste management company. And it was possible that that case included legal issues that were similar to those presented in the RM3 case. So last Thursday, the California Supreme Court issued their decision in Zolly, and it was a very narrow decision. They actually did not address the legal issues directly related to the RM3 case and didn't resolve that case. So at this point, we anticipate that the court will soon order briefing on the RM3 case. And then from there, we can expect a decision maybe a year. So unfortunately, the update is it's still uncertain. We're still waiting, but we're monitoring the case and we'll update you as soon as we know more.
Did you say it could be another year?
Yes.
Gosh, darn.
That's what we're thinking.
What is wrong with them? Why can't they come up with a decision? Read it and then decide. God,
I'm with you, Tony.
it's so frustrating.
One word on the finance report, just great news that our fare revenue and ridership caught up at the end of the year to keep us on budget. We've been ticking up after that gradually over the summer. So we haven't exhausted the benefits of our pandemic recovery program. That's continuing to yield some results for this agency. It's great to see, but we're not thinking about, we're still thinking about what's next and what else we need to do to make this system better, more attractive to riders. How can we capture more of the market that's out there? The other point on finances, you've probably seen the fuel prices have been going down pretty steadily. Also great news after the really huge uptick that we saw over the course of FY22. So hopefully that will continue. We're actually under budget right now on the fuel front for the current fiscal year. So fingers crossed that we see that.
Good.
Now I wanted to turn it over for a quick update on the state legislative front to our advocates who are on the Zoom. Nate Soloff and Jennifer Capitello from Nossaman are going to give us the latest on activity on the state legislative front. Nate, you on?
Yeah, can you hear me okay? It's not letting me join on video.
We can hear you.
Perfect. Board members, great to talk to you, and sorry for not being able to see you visually here. Hopefully we'll get that corrected. But Nate Sullivan with the Nossaman firm, along with Jennifer Capitolo. Great to be with you all, and just wanted to thank staff as well. Seamus and Lauren have been great. We're in constant communication with them. I'll just give a quick high level and then get into some details here. We currently are working on a bill to allow for CEQA exemptions until 2030 for our shoreside zero emission charging infrastructure projects. We helped secure $900 million for Northern California transit projects that need additional TARCP funding in this year's budget, as well as $600 million for heavy duty zero emission vehicles. Typically, ferries were not included in that $600 million pot. We were able to make sure that ferries were included this year for the CARB pot of funding. So that's a huge victory. And then also, in addition to the 2020 TARCP grant that we helped write for $9 million, we just found out that we were awarded the $15 million TARCP grant that we helped write as well through CalSTA. So more good news. And then we also helped arrange for the CalSTA Secretary Omishakin to come out and visit over the last few weeks. So we're glad that he just started over in recent months. So we're glad that he was able to see our system firsthand. Also, we've arranged some positive meetings with CARB staff and GoBiz staff, the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, to help bring them up to speed on WETA's plans for high frequency ferry loop service with our upcoming zero emission ferries. So really glad that they're excited about that and are going to be helpful as far as funding and efficiency measures go. So appreciate that partnership. And then also we were successful in getting several senators from the Bay Area to help support some of our federal funding requests. So it's been a productive year. To kind of dive into detail on some measures of interest to WETA, the bill moving forward on the CEQA exemptions is SB 922 by Senator Wiener. That's going to go to the governor here over the next couple weeks. And that, again, provides CEQA exemptions to 2030 for a public project to construct or maintain infrastructure or facilities to charge, refuel, or maintain zero emission public transit buses, trains, and ferries. So we were successful in adding ferries to that. So we're glad that that's moving forward. Two bills that are not moving forward that I just wanted to highlight. Assembly Bill 2807 by Assemblywoman Mia Bonta. We were working on that with the Golden Gate Bridge District. That would have clarified state law to ensure that ferries were eligible for all the different pots of state funding available to the different public transit entities, just to ensure that there was parity with buses and trains. That measure was actually flying through the legislature with unanimous bipartisan support in the Senate. The chair of the Senate Transportation Committee added all ferries to that as opposed to just public transit ferries. So that caused some cost pressure concerns that more ferries would be accessing state dollars. And so the Appropriations Committee had cost concerns on that measure. So we're going to continue to work with Senator Gonzalez and the different stakeholders on that bill to ensure that can move forward. Since sometimes there are discrepancies where, the regulations for a program might be a little unclear as to whether or not ferries are eligible. So we wanted to make it crystal clear in state law across the board on several different funding pots. So we'll be continuing to work on that. And the other measure we monitored and we're active on is Senate Bill 917 by Senator Becker, the Seamless Transit Transformation Act. That bill also had cost concerns from the Appropriations Committee. The fiscal analysis indicated that it was going to be several millions of dollars for MTC to work on that, as well as potentially millions of dollars from each of the transit agencies in the Bay Area. And so that bill was also held for cost concerns. So I'm sure that's going to continue to be worked on in the coming year as well. And then moving on to the budget, as I mentioned earlier, the 900 million pot of funding, there were pots of funding that were designated specifically for Northern California projects and Southern California projects. We were successful in helping to secure that 900 million pot. And again, these are specific to TIRCP funding for Northern California transit projects to help fund the remaining balance of any other previously awarded TIRCP projects. And so, for example, the zero emission conversion that WETA is working on in the high frequency ferry loop service, that would be a perfect candidate for that pot of money. So we'll be continuing to work with the California Transportation Agency staff on that. And then also the $600 million pot for the heavy duty zero emission vehicles. And historically, that's kind of been limited to freight, which excluded ferries. And so we were able to work with the budget stakeholders to clarify that issue so that ferries could be eligible for that pot of funding. And so we're excited for that partnership. And we just had a meeting with CARB staff over the last week to walk through the details on an additional program, the CORE program, which provides rebates for certain zero emission technologies, a 150 million pot that was included in the budget. So we're excited to continue to collaborate on that as well. And then, as I mentioned, our TIRCP successes with the $9 million grant in 2020 and then the $15 million grant in 2022. And happy to pass it over to Jennifer Capitolo to talk a little bit more detail about those TIRCP awards and also the potential to access that $900 million pot that was just approved in the budget.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Just want to chime in a little bit more on the TIRCP funding. And really, it was a solid team effort working with Lauren and others at WETA to put together these applications. They are not simple applications. They're very complicated with lots of different sections that you need to comment on. But in this latest round, I think we've really got our stride together on describing our projects and the benefits to the community. And I just want to share that there's 9 criteria in the TIRCP application. And back in 2020, I think we got 3 out of 9 in the high category. There's 5 categories. It's low, medium, medium, high, high. So we got 3 out of 9 as a high. In this latest application in 2022, we got 9 out of 9 as a high. So we essentially got a perfect application according to the TIRCP folks. So I think part of that, we've got good projects, and that's the first phase, is just having a really good project that fits. But also it's incumbent on us to describe our project in a way that meets the criteria of the TIRCP program. So again, $15 million. And this current competitive round, the last round of $9 million was a competitive round. This new round that Nate had mentioned is not competitive. It's kind of interesting. It's only for projects that have received funding before and have additional state or federal funds tied to their project. So we are talking with TIRCP and the secretary and Chad Edison about accessing these dollars for some funding gaps that we have, but it is a real opportunity to continue to draw down TIRCP funds. And the interesting thing too, again, is there's this non-competitive pot of funding, but there's also another competitive pot. So there is another opportunity for us to access funds beyond the 2 competitive that we've already received, this new non-competitive we may be eligible for, and then this other 4th funding stream going forward. So it's an exciting time for grants, both at the state and federal level. There's a lot of funding available. And that's really what I work on for this team, is just trying to help make sure that you all can access all the dollars that are available.
Excellent. Thank you both. Appreciate it. That is everything to report under the ED report. Sorry for the longer than usual report. That's what happens when we take a month and a half off during the summer. It doesn't slow down. Happy to answer any questions or respond to comments on any of these issues if there are.
Yeah, I have one quick question on, and thanks for the report. That was quite a report. SB 917, the Seamless Transportation Act. So I don't believe there was any registered opposition to it. And everything costs something if you're trying to do what a bill like that was trying to do, which is actually create a regional system that gets people back on transit. And, if you're going to create a common, I don't know what they identified as the cost, but certainly there are some. Also, sometimes there's actually cost savings from efficiencies, although maybe not in government, but in other things. Sometimes, when you join things together, you expect them to actually cost less because you eliminate redundant efforts. But that aside, who killed SB 917? You know?
Well, the appropriations process is always a little bit of a mystery. You're correct in that we were actually part of the support coalition on that. We testified in the Assembly Transportation Committee in support of the measure, and as well as voiced our support to the Appropriations Committee. I think there was concern, at least from the analysis that the committee did, stating that if money was not appropriated in the budget specifically for that purpose, then it could have general fund impacts. If either MTC or the different agencies in the Bay Area needed funding to comply with the measure. So I think that's, at least from the fiscal appropriation standpoint, that was the rationale that they gave. So it's likely that, because this bill has been worked on a few times in the past, they'll probably need to address that fiscal issue for this coming year in order to address the Appropriations Committee's concerns.
Because it's our view. I speak for I know that WETA endorsed the measure. We one of a couple of agencies that did. I think BART was another. But at the Bay Area Council, to the extent that we're going to have a regional measure at some point, if we don't get to the nuts and bolts of showing the public how we're providing seamless transportation, the chances of winning such a measure are greatly reduced. So I thought it was a really short-sighted decision, and we'd love to understand a little bit better, because there was a lot of discussion about this. It wasn't an unimportant bill. And, the thing just goes down in a committee like that, where there's no registered opposition to it. And I think nobody from the public comes and speaks against it, makes a big public stink about it, is interesting to me.
Yeah, no, it is fascinating. Sometimes, bills will take 4 or 5 years of different attempts and different, tweaks in order to get it right. So I'm sure that it'll definitely be introduced again next year, and we'll be part of that support coalition, and hopefully, address the chair of the Appropriations Committee's concerns.
Thank you. Other questions?
I would
Nate and Jennifer?
just make a
Tony?
comment. Yeah,
Comment?
this is on the previous the federal report on activities, federal government, and it refers to WETA continuing to work with Representative Garamendi on public ferry legislation. I just wanted to mention that Congressman Garamendi and Mike Thompson just announced short time ago, some 35 million. I hope the number's correct, but anyway, 35 million to upgrade the dry docks at Mare Island. And I thought that was, we ought to take note of that.
Yeah, that's great. Any other comments? Members of the public? Any questions? You can shoot your hand up if you have a comment. Okay, seeing none, I'll turn it back to you, Sam.
Nothing else to report.
Okay, thanks. That was a very comprehensive report, and well put forward in the package as well. So thank you for that. Let's go on to item 10, which is the consent calendar, which only consists of one item, which is the board meeting minutes from way back in June 2nd, 2022. Can I get a motion on the board minutes?
Moved.
We have a motion
I'll second.
and we have a second. Any comment or anyone want to remove the item and have a comment? We have a motion second. Can you call the roll on item 10, please?
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Del Bono,
Yes.
and Director.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 10 is approved. Item 11, approve revisions to fiscal year 2023 budget and salary schedule. All right.
Directors, in the interest of time, I'll just give a brief overview. There's a lot of information in the staff report, but basically this item accomplishes 4 things. One is to provide additional funding to catch up with the negotiations that happened after the budget was approved at the Blue and Gold Fleet's negotiations with their bargaining units and their staff. The second is to adjust WETA salaries to be basically commensurate with the increase that was given to the Blue and Gold staff. Third is to upgrade our grants position from a grants administrator to a grants manager. We're now a year into the process and we still don't have a permanent grants manager and are finding that to be such a valuable position to not have staffed on an ongoing basis. The fourth is to adjust the capital budget to account for what was basically a cash flow error in the budget, mostly having to do with funds spent in fiscal year 22. So it actually reduced the capital budget to account for those monies being spent in the prior year was the biggest part of that change. So the Blue and Gold Fleet negotiations basically resulted in an overall increase of 9% for their and our staff. So in order to achieve that, we had to add $687,000 to the budget, basically. We are not proposing any additional funds for WETA staff because the cost of that is small and it will be split 3 ways between operations, capital, and the admin budget. And we feel that we can absorb that within the budget that we had already approved back in June. That's kind of the brief overview. There is a new salary schedule in your packet. It's upgraded a little bit because our old salary schedule didn't tell you how many employees were being authorized by each of those positions. In some cases, there were 2 rather than just 1. So I clarified that chart just to make it clearer. There is a new complete capital budget in there because it also, we weren't able in June to give you the full true up of how all of the capital projects were doing at year end. And I'm actually very grateful that Lynn came back to help us with this project she seems to be unable to retire, which is good for us because she came back and was able to do that in a matter of 2 weeks. It's great. So that's in your packet, but I'll just stop and see if you have any questions. So attached to the staff report is the resolution adding money to the budget, the new salary schedule, and the capital budget.
Got it. Thank you for the presentation, which I thought was spelled out well. I don't have any questions. I think this is something we understood would happen. Any members of the board of directors, questions or comments, please?
I don't have any questions. I want to say I'm glad to see Aaron back. That's all.
Very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back, Aaron. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, for saying that. Any member of the public wish to speak on item number 11?
No one signed.
No one has signed up and no one's raised their hand. So we'll close the public hearing on this one and it's okay. I'll take a motion on item 11.
Moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and we have a second. Call the roll, please.
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Del Bono,
Yes.
and Director.
Yes.
All right. Very good. Item number, congratulations to the staff and anyone who was sitting there nervous. You can relax now.
I was not included in this. I don't understand.
You've got 2 bags of chips for lunch.
2 bags of chips.
A moment of administrative levity. Okay, item number 12. Approve revisions to the administrative code to clarify the executive director's authority to update and maintain the human resources guide.
Thank you, Chair Wonderman. I'll take this one. WETA's administrative policies are governed by a couple of documents. We have an administrative code that requires board approval to make changes to. That's largely where board policy is set over how the agency is administered. Like a lot of other agencies, we have a human resources code, and that goes into a little bit more detail about, I would say, kind of more mundane topics, like recruitment process, the timing of compensation, how often paychecks are allocated, how personnel records are handled, performance management processes, which is one that has come up recently as a place that we've identified could use a lot of improvement at our agency. Remote work policies is another one that we have obviously, like just about everybody else, paid a little bit more attention to and settled on some pretty specific policies. Holidays, even dress code is included in the WETA HR guide. Most other agencies don't require board approval for changes to the HR guide that are not inconsistent that are consistent with policies in the administrative code set by the board of directors. So this would give us the authority to make those changes administratively as long as they're consistent with the overarching policies that the board has set.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask one question. When it comes to, I mean, I don't think anyone on this board wants to micromanage you or the agency. That's certainly not our intention. Is there, within granting this exercise of increased authority, is there any material risk of incurring, let's say material cost increases as a result of providing this authority?
I would say not material, and there's certainly going to be a cost impact, however minor, associated with any decision that we make along these lines. But we would make sure that anything that is significant or material, even if it's not specified by the administrative code, is brought to the board's attention and not made administratively. These changes that we're seeking, and I would say the two that have come up recently are the performance evaluation process and needing to put some further definition behind that. I wouldn't consider that to have a material impact on it from a cost perspective at all. The other agencies have adopted Juneteenth as a holiday. We've done that in our budgets that the board has approved, but we haven't had that reflected in the HR guide. So taking an additional step of having that change reflected in the HR guide wouldn't have a material impact on what has already been decided through the budget. So these changes are not going to have a significant impact on any budget decisions that the board would make.
What did you say about a dress code?
That is a section in the HR guide, and it's not one that we've reviewed.
Well, as I look around, I can tell we haven't reviewed it.
Yeah. Don't go any further with that. Great risk. Any other comments or questions from the board on this item? Okay, any member of the public wish to speak on it?
Nobody had signed up.
Going once, going twice, sold. Okay, let's get a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion and we have a second. All it takes for action. Get action. So can we get the roll call, please?
I'm sorry, Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
Director Alblay,
Yes.
Director Del Bono,
Yes.
and Director Inton.
Yes,
Items approved.
Okay, thank you. Item number 13, approved contract award to Dakota Creek Industries, Inc. for the MV Pixis generator diesel particulate filter demonstration project.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Hey, Melanie, is it okay if I close this?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, Tim Hanners, Manager Operations and Maintenance. I'm here today to recommend the approval of a contract to Dakota Creek Industries for the amount of $300,000 with a contingency of $30,000, and to authorize the Executive Director to negotiate and execute an agreement with DCI to take over any related actions to support this work. Recently, the California Air Resources Board has made some changes to the Harborcraft rule, which require DPFs on any new vessels that come into the state, and what is happening with the older engines that are out there currently. They are on a timeline, and based on the engineers, the year of the manufacture of the engine, DPF will be required within the next 5 to 6 years. Now, we've talked a lot about this with CARB and DPFs and how on a lot of our vessels, the DPFs will not fit and the technology is not right yet. The difference between this and what we've discussed in the past is this filter is for one of the generators that is a lot smaller. While the industry on the marine side is not advanced enough for DPFs with these types of generators, it is used a lot on the land side. And so what we've been working on this for a little over a year, is working with the manufacturers to help develop that technology on our vessels, to marinize that equipment. And one area that we feel that we can do that is on the Pyxis class and on the generators for those boats. For that class of generator, there's a total of 6 DPFs that we could possibly install. What we want to do with this contract award is to do a demonstration project, get all the approvals done, install it on one generator on one boat, test it, work with CARB, work with the EPA, work with the manufacturers to prove the technology. Assuming that works and it's safe and reliable, that we would move on and then install additional DPFs on the Pyxis class. While CARB has mandated that DPFs need to be installed, our plan to deal with the Harborcraft regulations is to do an ACE plan, alternative compliance plan, that will not require us to put DPFs on the main engines where it doesn't fit and would require a lot of modifications to the vessel. And so while we think we will be able to pass those regulations with our alternative compliance plan, we still want to demonstrate that we're going to do everything possible to reduce emissions when it's feasible and when it doesn't require major modifications to the vessel. We went out to bid for this project, and DCI was the only one that responded. We had some interest in the pre-proposal conference. We reached out to several yards and asked, was there anything in the technical specifications or any other requirements that made you feel uncomfortable and not put in a bid? And the response we got back was that it was high risk because it's never been done. And at the time, the shipyards were really busy. And because of the lower dollar amount for this contract, there just wasn't a ton of interest. But the good news is that DCI, we feel, is fully capable of doing this. They were actually the builders of the Pyxis class, so they have a lot of knowledge about the vessel. And we feel comfortable that they'll be able to work with us to make this happen. Because this is going to be a program that we work not just with DCI, but with CARB, hopefully with the EPA and other stakeholders too, to help prove that this technology is available. While it's not on some of the bigger equipment, this would be like the first step to marinize a DPF filter.
Thanks, Tim. Question. So what would be, if this were successful, we were able to apply it to the full Pyxis class, what would be the reduction in particulate matter pollution that we would experience? What's the magnitude?
So generally speaking, DPFs are very effective at reducing particulate matter. Generally speaking, they can reduce up to 85% of particulate matter.
So we would expect something in that range.
That's what we expect, something in that range, yeah.
That's a lot. But these are not the main generators.
These are the main generators on the boat, but they're not the main propulsion. So just for context, I think the generators burn 2% of the fuel that the main engine does. So to start, it's something, it is a reduction in emissions. And it's something that we feel that we could accomplish and test. I think hopefully the industry, you know, and what we're hoping in the industry is that these units become smaller, more compact, and as they're tested and more companies get involved and they see there's a market, that it's a possibility in the near future that we will be able to install the DPFs.
Do you think the cost per filter will remain in the range of 300,000, or do you think it will drop with successful prototyping?
Yeah, and I think if after this project, because it's such a high risk, I think the cost reflects that. And so subsequent installations, because we will have this huge learning curve, the cost will be reduced.
And are these costs, these replacement or these filters, are they, is there grant funding that we can receive for that, or would it just be something that we absorb in our general capital?
We budgeted for it through our federal capital program.
So Tim, first and foremost, thank you for all the work you've done on this. It's really clear that you've gone out of your way to make this effort successful. Really appreciate that you've talked to different players in the marketplace to get that feedback, but also build awareness and hopefully build the market. It sounds like that's where we're going to start. I thought the written report was really comprehensive and answers the questions of why this is ultimately a sole source. And I think that's really important for us to be that transparent. But the work that you've done behind the scenes to make sure that we haven't left someone out of the process is really greatly appreciated. And I thank you very much. The one thing that maybe I missed it, I didn't see, but when will these all be in service? How long does it take for this work to get done?
So for this particular one, if this was approved today, we would start working on the contract with DCI. And then we hope to have this completed by the end of this fiscal year. So by July 1, 2023.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Really, really appreciate this effort.
Yeah.
It may have shown in the report, how long do the vessels go out of service for this?
We're hoping a couple of weeks for this project, but because we're still working through some of the engineering, we don't have a specific timeline on it.
But right now,
Right now, we're looking at 2 weeks, just one engine on one boat.
Okay. That makes sense.
Right.
Any other comments, questions from directors?
But this would only, wait, so is this, it's class. They have the requisite space available. So that's how many vessels again in the Pyxis class?
There's 3 and then 2 generators on each boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the remaining
5.
13 vessels. So this could work on Pyxis. It would be more problematic on the other vessels. Is that?
Yeah, we haven't done like in-depth engineering on it, so we need to do that. But yeah, some of the vessels there is just no room. We're not going to, without making some modifications. But I think after we get through this one, we could then start looking at some of the other class of vessels.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. And thank you, Director Moyer, for pointing that out, that it's clear that there's a lot of work that goes into a 1.5-page memo, right? Or behind the scenes. And we have to start somewhere, and this seems to be the perfect spot to start. And hopefully it's successful. And when do you hope to have some findings that you can share once it's been installed? Will you need 6 months or?
Yeah, we have to work a test program through so they can get the approval. But hopefully after a couple of weeks, we'll have something to share.
Okay.
Just on the reliability and how it's going. The other thing with this demonstration project is there's 2 generators on the boat. We're going to only install this on one.
Yeah.
So as we're running it, if we're having any problems, the crew will be able to switch over. And so we have some redundancy there built in.
And so will there actually be emissions? Will we be able to measure the emissions reduction too, or will you just
base it on the successful implementation, or will there actually be testing of how successful it is removing?
Yeah, they'll be testing, and Ripos is the manufacturer. And they need to get EPA clearance for this. So they'll be doing extensive testing. We'll be working with them to
Okay.
get that testing done, and those reports will be available to us.
Great.
They trail behind the boat and measure what's coming out. Right?
Yeah.
What they do.
Don't go any further with that.
Anyone's welcome to come along for the ride. Okay, members of the public on item number 13. Anyone signed up?
No one has signed up.
No one has signed up for 13. Any further questions, comments from the board? Okay, let's close that and take a motion if there would be one.
So moved.
Motion,
Second,
second, call the roll, please.
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Del Bono,
Yes.
and Director. Eaton.
yes,
All right, that takes us to item 14, approve sole source contract award to Pacific Power Group LLC for main engine preventative maintenance services. Why, oh, why would we award a sole source contract? Tim?
Would you like me to start there?
His favorite question.
yeah,
It's always the same answer.
because we want to.
Go ahead.
So we're recommending that we award this sole source to Pacific Power Group in the amount of 1.7 million for the main engine maintenance services for 5 of our vessels, the Cetus, Hydrus, Argo, and Tinley, Mare Island, and approve a contract contingency in the amount of $80,000. All 5 of these vessels are due for major engine overhaul. This is covered with federal dollars. The Cetus, Hydrus, Argo are all going through their engine midlives at 13,500 hours. Boat's been in service since 2015 or 16, that class. And major overhauls are due at 27,000. Some of the work that entails is fuel injector replacements, borescoping of cylinders, replacement of several various pumps, fuel pumps, coolant pumps, water pumps, rebuilding of existing turbochargers, replacement of starter motors, thermostats, crankcase breathers, cooling water systems, engine mounts, inspection of engine mounts. And so it's a lot of work on those 3 vessels. And just for context, it's about $374,000 for that work, for those 2 engines on that boat. And so I'm going to try to break out the 1.7 million a little bit for everyone. Additionally, the Antinely is due for its midlife, and that midlife's at 10,500 hours.
He's trying not to take it personally, Tim.
It hurts, you know,
Yeah, well, we're spending a lot of money on the boat and we're fixing her up, so.
end it on me.
That work's coming in at $509,000. As you can see, we're talking about different engine hours, different midlifes. Every class of boat is different. Some are rebuilt at 10,000, some are 20, some are 13. It all depends on the load profile and the service that the boat's in. In addition, the Mare Island is getting a 7,000 hour fuel injector replacement that's coming in at $105,000. Pacific Power Group is the authorized dealer for MTU on the West Coast. They're the only ones that are qualified to do that work and to carry out the warranty in case there are repairs or failed equipment. That is the reason and the justification for the sole source.
If there were others who were designated to be able to do it, would it have a major impact on the cost? I think it said in the report that, the proposed cost comes very close to within our estimate, but is our estimate higher because there's only one buyer?
What we do for this situation where you can only use one vendor, what we do for our engineers estimate is we'll reach out to other companies like Golden Gate Ferry and some of the tug companies, Foss, to see what Pac Power has been charging them. Because they're in a similar situation with us where Pac Power is the authorized dealer. They're the authorized service provider for these engines. And so that's how we base the engineer's estimate, not only just off, we do take and look at what their quote was last year, because we do this almost every year now, and compare that, but we don't just stop there. We then reach out to some of the other companies that do work with them to make sure that, the price is within range.
Okay. Questions, comments from my colleagues? Any member of the public wish to comment on this item number 14?
No one second.
Okay, if not, I'll take a motion on item number 14. Moved. We have a motion. Director,
I'll
second.
second.
Dr. Delvano seconds. Can you call the roll, please?
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Del Bono,
Yes.
Director Pinto.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 15, thanks, Tim. Vallejo Terminal Reconfiguration Update and Authorization to Release a Request for Proposal for Environmental Review and Permitting Services.
Thank you, Chair Wonderman. Kevin Conley, Manager of Planning and Development. Give me 1 second. Is it still there? Oh, there is that. I am. Now what's happening? With me as always is my company is Tom. Hold your applause till the end, please. Thank you, Tom. The staff is recommending the authorization for release for request for proposals for environmental services for the Vallejo terminal reconfiguration. We as a staff have not briefed you, the board, on this project. So we thought this was the best time, as we're doing the authorization to release, to also give you a brief on the entire project. It's a project for us. And we need to give ample credit here to Chad Mason, the project manager, not just for managing this project to this point and beyond, but also for the person who came up with the creative solution that we're pursuing here. Because over the years, our terminal here, which has had the need for regular dredging services, as those dredging costs have increased significantly. Chad was the person who came up with the potential design that was a fix permanently to avoid those costs in the future and the disruption. So kudos to Chad. And this picture right here on your screen is a shot of the mud and the boat coming right up to the mud from our most recent dredging event. And a couple of things I'm going to walk you through here. The first is the dredge history, as I mentioned. As we took over the terminal, we, as in WETA from the city, it was expected that there was a need to dredge this terminal every 3 to 4 years. And that expense wasn't significant. It was just a part of normal maintenance. Through the years since then, since 2008, we've discovered that has increased significantly over time. And I think we can and we have a lot of consultants who spend a lot of good money on the science here. It's basically a climate change. It's an impact of climate change. So we're seeing, and with another confluence of events is that disposing of the dredging material has gotten much more expensive over the years, which was not anticipated. So there you can see the amount of dredging and the frequency of it, which has been significantly more than we originally expected. Here's the cost. And keep in mind that third column, the cost per cubic yard, something that started out at $13 per cubic yard has increased to $53 in our last cycles. And it's not only is it expensive to do it, it's the greater cost, frankly, is the disruption in our service. So when we do this, we have to create a temporary terminal for Vallejo passengers. And sometimes it's unanticipated and the dredging happens, the sedimentation happens so quickly, we don't have time to mobilize a dredger. We actually move our main service over to Mare Island. Significant disruption in our passengers' lives, in our service, in our need to communicate with the passengers, and altogether very disruptive. This graphic shows you here the basin where our Vallejo terminal sits, and you can see the sort of rate of dredging as it gets more frequent as you get closer to the shore. I'm not going to, I have Chad has about 30 great science slides that I'm not going to show, but I'm going to just summarize and make it really simple. The blue areas in these graphics, which is the main channel of the Napa River, does not need to be dredged. And the problem statement was, can we find a design that gets our terminal into the blue area and outside the red, yellow, and orange, closer to the shore and where we're seeing the need for dredging and higher levels of sedimentation. So we entered into a study, and this was about a year ago, and we've had some great consultants on board to help us understand some of these needs. It's not just an issue of dredging, but can we find other ways to improve the terminal if we're going to go through the capital expense of changing the design? Can we improve operations? Can we improve safety? The existing terminal is perfectly safe, but we could always be safer on everything we do. Can we eliminate or reduce at least the dredging needs? And can we find a way to reduce our long-term expenses because of dredging? All the configurations of the terminal are here, and we have two alternatives that we've come up with. They're both the same in terms of capital cost components, the same level of walkway, same level of piles. They really don't differ, and they don't differ in cost. They're about $11 million each. It's really just what's better in terms of operationally, and then what's also better for construction. So as I said, it's $11 million cost that we're estimating. What we're authorizing here is just the environmental. So we need to do the environmental process first for permitting. That's about a year away. Through that process, we'll also work with stakeholders such as the city, BCDC, and the design will change over that period of time. And I'll share with you the two concepts in terms of the reconfiguration. Up at the top of graphic is where you can see the basin, and the ticket building right now is up in the upper left-hand corner. And this basically mimics what we do for our temporary terminal. We put it on this, what amounts to the south side of the basin, and it's out in the river. This is another view of it. And we have engaged with the city staff at Vallejo, and we haven't yet decided what would happen to that basin area if we were to reconfigure our terminal this way. It's possible that we could create a sheet pile wall and maybe deck over that to take back some public space for plazas and things like that. There's a lot of ideas. And the city is fortunately right now going through a waterfront master plan where they're going to consider this as a design opportunity. Alternative 2 just flips it to the other side of the basin. This is a little bit more advantageous in terms of access. It's closer to the bus transit terminal. It's closer to the parking. It's closer to the building and the services there. It's a little less advantageous in terms of operation during construction. But we are still evaluating both options.
How would you get in and out when you're constructing?
This cartoon is not terrific in terms of how it looks, but I mean, there is enough room to get in and out on the south there. This makes the boats look a little bit more like cruise boats here. They're not that big. So the next steps is to continue our stakeholder outreach that we've been engaged in. We're going to take it, we haven't yet taken to the public per se, but we've taken to stakeholders, cities, BCDC, regulatory agencies. Resource agencies will be included in this, and the design will ultimately be shaped by them. But in order to do all that work, we need to do the analysis necessary for the environmental impact of it. And then hopefully a year from now, we are looking at a readiness of a project that we could come back and seek funding for. So with that, I can close it and answer any questions.
I've got three questions. So I have three. What, who would pay for it? The ultimate project? Funding company?
We haven't figured out yet. There are certainly federal sources. I mean, ultimately this project, and it's in the memo, but it's not on the PowerPoint. Ultimately, this project pays for itself in 8 years, given our current rate of dredging.
Yeah.
So it's an undeniably good investment.
Is that because there's no more dredging? You go to zero dredging out here,
Correct.
which is a lot less.
Correct.
And why, that was my second question. Why did the cost of dealing with the dredge spoils go up that much?
Part of it is the capacity is filling up at the closest place to dispose of the dredging. Cullen and Ranch is what it's called. It's a monopoly. There's only one company that operates it. And so to move the dredged material has to go farther now, and that is more expensive.
What about the Montezuma wetlands? Is that the same thing? Or is that the
It's in the same area.
same?
Yeah.
place? Okay, questions from directors? Comments?
When would you be involving the city in terms of the planning?
We've already been engaged with the city.
Okay,
staff.
I misunderstood.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
So on the staff level,
Mhm.
but nothing in terms of public yet.
Yeah, okay.
And we're yielding to the city because they're currently going to go through some planning process where this idea can be introduced.
I think the writers are very familiar with at least one of those, because that's exactly what you do with the.
Right.
With the temporary thing you put in.
Right.
On the south side?
Yeah.
Correct.
Director Delvano?
Yeah, I have a question that's kind of on this subject. It might be better for Chad later on, but with what we're doing here, is this something like we would look at, if we build other terminals where we build the terminal far enough out in the water where we don't require dredging? I mean, if we had to do Vallejo all over again, would that be something that you would look at today? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a good point. I think I would say that, for example, in our Redwood City project, we had a couple of different options, and we're gravitating to the one that has the absolute least amount of dredging. And so that's something that's kind of a component that's come into our project planning now. I will say that not to cast any shade on the people who designed this or planned this 20 years ago, but those dredging costs were so much less back then. It wasn't considered as much of a stumbling block as it is today.
Yeah.
So that's one. And then, yes, if we were designing Vallejo today, this is what we would do. We wouldn't do that basin arrangement.
Which just is interesting because of talk of future expansion on some of the places we're looking at. Like the great work. It's interesting to use this concept of building further out in water that doesn't need to be dredged.
Mhm.
Okay. Christina, were you raising your hand to volunteer to pay for this, or did you want to make a comment, or what was that?
I was not volunteering to pay for it. No, I did want to comment. So Christina Ratcliffe, I'm Planning and Development Services Director for City of Vallejo. And first, I just wanted to thank WETA. Chad Mason reached out to us. Other WETA staff members reached out to Public Works and stuff, and we really appreciate the early heads up and involvement in the city. I did want to clarify one thing on the waterfront master plan. We haven't actually started that yet. We do have a waterfront master plan. We need to amend it. And we will be bringing that to council probably at mid-year budget time to talk about that. We also have a downtown plan, which ends right at Georgia, right at the Ferry Building. And we are currently in the process of updating the specific plan for Mare Island. So what we want to do is overall, bring all of those three together. And this is seems a perfect timing to talk about that and to talk about the reconfiguration you mentioned. And just want to put a vote in for the plaza. I think that would be a great idea.
Excellent, thank you. Any Director Albert, did you have a further
Just a
comment?
quick question on dredging. Is that just operating, or how do we fund dredging today? Where does that funding usually come from?
I can answer that. So we have the Transit Capital Priorities Program, which is coordinated through MTC and funded through federal funds. So we generally submit our program. Sometimes it's a one-year program, sometimes it's a 3-year program. And we generally now are requesting funds every 2 years for that. So to the extent we know this project is going to happen, we would ask them to reprogram perhaps future dredging money in order to help pay for this. We would probably have to identify additional funds though, because the cost of the project is much more than we have programmed for dredging, but that's part of the strategy. To try to cobble together enough money to make it happen, knowing that we would have future cost savings.
Great.
Yeah. So it's federal, 80% federal, 20% matching.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this item? If not, I shall ask for someone to make a motion. We need a motion on this, right? Because we're going to put it on our. But yes, we'll take a motion.
It seems appropriate that I make the motion, make it clear I was here
It's a
today.
necessity that you make it. We have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Call the roll, please.
Chair Wonderman,
Absolutely, yes.
Vice Chair Valeo,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Del Bono,
Yes.
and Director Intensity.
Yes.
Pending how this actually goes, please congratulate Doug Mason for the great idea. Yeah, that's value added right there.
Yeah,
It's something like that.
absolutely.
It's really good.
Yeah, you could say, look at the big brain on Chad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many more times the board wanted to hear about Vallejo dredging. So I think this is a really good way to avoid that.
But
Okay,
Chair
we have
Wonderman, I think that's, I mean, it's something for us to just keep in mind for the future as well, that dredging is something that could impact where we decide to put terminals in the future too.
It's a financial and an environmental issue, so we
Yeah.
do have to be mindful.
Yep.
Indeed. Less dredging, better. Okay, by a lot. Item number 16 is an information item. Update on fair coordination and integration study, institutional employer pass pilot program.
Good afternoon, Chair Wonderman and Directors Arti Kripanan with Planning and Development, WETA. This is an information item providing an update on the fair coordination and integration study. The study launched in 2020. Since then, there has been extensive collaboration on this project in the past 2 years with multiple transit agencies, including WETA. The outcome of the study has been identified as 4 major fair coordination strategies. WETA staff have actively participated and provided input in the study and is continuously involved in the subsequent action items that have emerged from the study. The first and foremost action item that has been identified is the deployment of the institutional pass pilot, which is branded as Clipper Bay Pass. The pilot will be implemented in 2 phases and will last until 2024. The first phase was launched this Monday, focusing on the 4 educational institutions, namely UC Berkeley, SF State, San Jose State, and Santa Rosa Junior College. The pilot will be launching next month for the select affordable housing properties managed by Mid-Penn Housing. The impact of this program on WETA is not known yet, but we have the opportunity to test it during the pilot. MTC is working on the details of monitoring this program, such as looking at Clipper usage data, survey feedback, and increase in the uptake of passes. There is no revenue impact since MTC has committed to reimburse transit agencies for the waived fares from using the pass during the phase 1 of the pilot. I just want to close out by saying that while SB 917 is not moving forward, as Chair Wonderman pointed out, the fare integration study results are taking a step forward. This pass pilot is one of the first tangible actions from the study, advancing into the other fare coordination strategies that will be coming out in the upcoming months. The second phase of the pilot will be extending the pass to employers across the region. And as details emerge on the next action items, we will continue to update the board. Thank you, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thanks, Arti. Any, that's good progress report. Any questions or comments from the board?
No, I think it's great.
I have one comment.
Sure.
I appreciate what the MTC and the task force are trying to achieve here. Only 25% of the students at each university, except for Sonoma State, will receive the pass, and 75% will have to manage with their current pass options. And so there's an opportunity for the task force to really analyze and assess what the impact is in ridership uptake on cross transit agency usage, and also the revenue impacts from such a program. So although it may seem unfair to the 75% who do not get a free pass across our precious transit agencies, I think it's a smart way to test and see what the financial implications might be, at least for the student population, and also to explore where there might be increase in ridership, et cetera. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. I think the word unfair is perfectly applicable here. Any other board comments? Members of the board? Members of the public, anyone signed up on item 16?
No one has signed up.
Okay, let's close the, thanks, Arti. Appreciate that update.
Yeah.
We can just accept this, right? Because it's not an action item, so that's great. So let's go on to the final item on the agenda, which is to talk about non-agenda items. Has any member of the public signed up to speak on an item not on the agenda?
No one has signed up.
Would any member of the public who hasn't signed up like to sign up and make a comment on a non-agendized item? You have a few moments to take that action. Okay, if you haven't, we'll close the testimony on item number 17. I just want to thank everyone for your extra time spent at the meeting today. This was a really good opportunity to look while we're working on the present, to look to the future. And I thought we made a lot of good progress. So thank you, Seamus and team. Thanks for taking the oath this morning to become disaster prevention specialists. I hope we never need your service, but at some point we just might. So thanks, everyone. The meeting is adjourned.
That was faster than I